Welcome back to Askewed Reviews. And as I'm continuing to do so throughout the year, I am doing the entire Disney animated collection. So today we are doing the 1940 film Fantasia. Here is your trivia question for today. What holiday is occurring during the Night on Bald Mountain segment? The answer will be at the end of this episode. Fantasia was a fully immersive audience experience, but it was also released as a full feature-length animated film. The entire event was hosted by Deems Taylor and it was conducted by Leopold Stokowski. The first section went along to Toccata and Fugue in D minor by Johann Sebastian Bach. This is where a bunch of animated lines, shapes, and designs move to the rhythm of music. In the next segment, it was the Nutcracker Suite by Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky, and in this one we got to see the changing of seasons with some fairies and some plants coming to life. The next one, and probably most well known, is The Sorcerer's Apprentice by Paul Dukas. In this one, we get to see Mickey Mouse as he is the apprentice to a sorcerer, as anything and everything can go wrong. Next, we have The Rite of Spring by Igor Stravinsky, and in this one, we watch Earth forming from the beginning to the extinction of the dinosaurs. Then there's the Pastoral Symphony by Ludwig van Beethoven, and it's a Greco-Roman story with fauns, cherubs, centaurs, and the gods. Then we have Dance of the Hours by Emile Carré Poncelli, which ends up being a ballet with ostriches, hippos, elephants, and alligators. And finally, we have a two-part finale with A Night on Bald Mountain by Modest Mussorgsky and Ave Maria by Franz Schubert. A Night on Bald Mountain tells the story of a giant devil named Chernabog who awakens and summons evil spirits and demons to Bald Mountain to dance and amuse him. And then Ave Maria closes out this tale with the bells ringing and causing the change of night into dawn, with all of the creatures receding back to where they came from. This movie used over 1,000 artists and actually has more than 500 animated characters. Instead of Fantasia, it was originally going to be called the concert feature. This was also the first major Hollywood film to be released with no written credits appearing on screen except for the intermission title card. At 124 minutes, it's the longest Disney animated feature. Early on, there was talks of having fragrances being sprayed throughout the theater at the first live production of this. Walt Disney originally wanted to re-release the film each year with new music and new segments. This was dropped though as it ended up being too overly ambitious. In the Nutcracker Suite segment, the little mushroom does a little jump while crisscrossing its legs. Animator Art Babbitt modeled this after a move that Curly does from the Three Stooges. The Sorcerer's Apprentice segment is based off of the 1797 original story. Also, though, it was originally planned to just be a silly symphony short, but Walt Disney talked it up so much to Leopold Stokowski that they ended up putting it in as one of the segments for the film. That segment was also the first appearance of Mickey Mouse in a feature film. What's interesting is that Mickey wasn't the first choice for the Sorcerer's Apprentice. It was originally going to be Dopey, and even possibly Donald before they went with Mickey. Something you may or may not have noticed, but in the Rite of Spring segment, they show the extinction of the dinosaurs being caused by an intense drought. The reason for this is that the theory about the asteroid strike did not actually come about until 1982. So the music in this film is done by the Philadelphia Orchestra, but the orchestra that you see in the in-between segments was not actually them. In fact, it was just a collection of Hollywood musicians and studio employees. Before Leopold Stokowski agreed to conduct the music, Arturo Toscanini was actually considered. Igor Stravinsky, who was the only composer who was alive to actually see his music used in Fantasia, actually hates this movie, mainly due to the fact that he didn't like the edits they made to his score without his permission. Famous artist Salvador Dali actually made some illustrations for the movie, but these ideas ended up being discarded. The animators on this film secretly modeled elements of the sorcerer after Walt Disney. They even called the character Yen Sid, or Disney backwards. Ruby Dandridge was actually the live-action model for Hyacinth Hippo. Bela Lugosi, who is mostly known for playing Dracula, was also the live-action model for Chernabog in Night on Bald Mountain. Parents originally complained that the Night on Bald Mountain segment was too scary for their kids. So Fantasia was released during World War II, but were you aware that the film was banned in Japan? This is because the imperial government feared that if Japanese audiences saw that Americans were capable of creating such beautiful works of art, the nation would be demoralized. And now for our segment called The Dark Side of Disney. In the Pastoral Symphony segment, there are all sorts of mythological creatures, everything from pegasi to cherubs to fauns and centaurs and even centaurettes, as they called the female ones. But there are two characters that actually show up in this that don't appear anymore as of 1969. And those two characters are Otika and Sunflower. Luckily, Disney finally realized how bad it was to keep these terribly racist, stereotypical black characters in the film. So, when it comes to the film Fantasia, this is an amazing spectacle. So many fascinating things to watch, great music, but in general, it is a little boring, and I feel that it probably was a whole lot better to actually experience it live and in person. So, I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 5. Now, if you did really enjoy Fantasia, some options you have to watch, of course, are the sequel, Fantasia 2000. Not necessarily a sequel or a remake, but technically connected because it is made by Disney. There is a live action Sorcerer's Apprentice movie. There was also a Fantasia video game, and there are some connections to two other video game series with the Epic Mickey video games and Kingdom Hearts. Now, as for the trivia question from the beginning of this episode, what holiday is occurring during the Night on Bald Mountain segment? It is mentioned that it is Walpurgis Night, which is a precursor to Halloween and was primarily celebrated in Germanic and Celtic traditions. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews, and if there's a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments.